Start. All right. Hey guys. Welcome to Intro to Mandatory Loan Sales. We're going to just give everyone a few minutes to log in and join before we get started. We were just talking about where Chad is located and his amazing background. Chad, you want to
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, well, first I gotta admit it's not real. It's a virtual background, unfortunately. Wish I was sitting in the office today, but it is an actual picture from our office. But yeah, we're set up right across the street from where the San Diego Padres play at Petco Park, and so yeah, wish I was there because they got a game later this evening. So it's usually fun to catch the game from the office if you can.
Can you see the game from the office?
Well, you can see about half of it if I move my head out of the way here. But we have a nice little balcony out there that you can, yeah, kind of enjoy the environment from afar, and we have a TV inside too that you can throw the actual game on to watch it up close. But yeah, it's just fun being in the area with all the energy.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I love that background. Um, well, before we get this started, I wanted to welcome everyone to the event. And, Chad will be taking questions throughout the session. So if you have any questions at all, we want this to be interactive. Please drop your questions in chat and we'll be able to answer those as we go. And this session is being recorded, and you will receive a copy of the recording as well as the presentation after the session. So don't worry about taking too much notes. You're welcome to do that, but you'll get a copy afterwards too. And if you have any questions for Chad afterwards, please reach out to us or please reach out to Chad. We're happy to connect you guys as well. With that, I'm going to turn this over to MCT's Director of Northwest Regional Sales, Chad Stone.
Thanks so much, Mimi. I just want to start off by saying we really appreciate the Mortgage Collaborative and the partnership that we have together. Personally, I do see a lot of value, with the membership, but also there's a great synergy between us and TMC, maybe because we share some similar letters in our names, TMC and MCT, but also it seems like the mission and the goal that you guys have with helping out people in the industry getting educated and growing in their positions. We take a similar approach with our clients as well. So just want to extend our appreciation for this opportunity to present today. And yeah, we're excited to be here. All right, let's get right into it if we're ready. All right, so just to start, there's a quick slide here that I included. It's just a little bio about MCT if you want to reference this later on at your own leisure. But feel free to ask us any questions afterwards if you do have further questions about any of these different areas where we can support. So today we're talking about mandatory loan sales. I would imagine that a lot of the people on the webinar today are maybe considering making the move from best efforts to mandatory, or it's something that you know a little bit about, but you want to get a better understanding before maybe taking a deeper dive into mandatory loan sales and eventually hedging and all that as well. So I'm going to kind of design this presentation for those types of folks who maybe work in a secondary type of role or even operations as well, who do want to get that better understanding of the benefits, requirements, and all that. So let's start off by just defining what mandatory loan sales really is. So, as opposed to best efforts, commitments, and loan sales, mandatory loan sales really occur when a seller goes to commit a loan or a group of loans and guarantees delivery of those loans to the investor. So most of the time with mandatory loan sales or commitments, it's done after loans have closed and funded. And because of that, and because the full guarantee that the loans are going to be delivered to the investor is willing to pay a premium for those loans as opposed to best efforts where there isn't that full guarantee that the investor is going to end up with the loan. So, you might hear the word mandatory used in similar sentences as the word hedging as well. We'll get a little more into what hedging is, but just know that in order to commit or sell loans on a mandatory delivery basis, especially when they occur after loans have closed and funded, we do use a hedging strategies, or most sellers or lenders will use a hedging strategy to protect themselves during that loan process before the loans end up closing and funding. So let's go in and take a closer look at what the differences are between best efforts delivery and mandatory. So I would imagine a lot of you folks on the line today are currently in a best efforts model or selling in a best efforts model. It's honestly the most simple way of selling your loans today, but I will say it is a little limited and binary in some ways where mandatory, there are some greater opportunities for higher profitability. We'll get into the benefits later, but that is one of the main benefits of mandatory. Now, we already touched on the delivery obligation. With best efforts, you're only obligated to deliver that loan if it ends up closing. But with mandatory, there you have to end up delivering the loans no matter what. That's kind of why a lot of the lenders will mostly sell their loans after they've closed and funded. In terms of, you might hear that there are different types of risks associated with mandatory and hedging. Really, that's why we have or use a hedging strategy, is to protect ourselves from any sort of risk that may occur during the time of lock and loan sale. So, looking at the lender's risk window at the bottom there, for best efforts, it's really in between when the lock request comes in and when you lock it with the investor. But with mandatory, we need to protect ourselves in between that lock request and when the loan closes and funds. But another major benefit of mandatory in general is the operational efficiencies that you pick up along the way. In the best efforts model, you're managing all those loans on a loan by loan basis, as opposed to mandatory, where you're managing your loans in aggregate. You're managing a pipeline of loans. So there are a lot of efficiencies to pick up in various departments of the entire secondary loan process. And we'll touch on some of that in a little bit here. But really, the main thing to take away here is sort of the time of sale or commitment from best efforts to mandatory, and the different benefits that come along in terms of profitability and operations too. So let's move on here and talk a little bit just about what hedging really is, so we can kind of get a better understanding of why we use a hedging strategy. So mortgage pipeline hedging is a risk management strategy that, again, protects a seller from any sort of changes in pricing or market movement that could occur while the loan is in process to be closed. So, you can think of all the loans that you're hedging today as your long position or your open pipeline, right? And then whatever hedge position we put on would be your short position or your open trade pipeline. We'll talk about a little bit later in the slide deck how to determine how much of a short position or a hedge position you want to put on. But really, one of the main things to take away from this slide deck here is that lenders will use a hedging instrument called a TBA in order to hedge their mortgage pipeline. TBA is a to be announced security. Really, it's a forward contract on mortgage-backed securities. And you might also be familiar with the entity referred to as broker dealers. Those are the institutions that sellers will trade TBAs with. So we'll talk about, again, some more requirements in order to get into hedging and mandatory loan sales, and how broker dealers play a role in all of that. So why does hedging matter, and why do we use this strategy? Really, the whole goal of the hedge is to protect yourself from any changes in market movement, right? So in between the time that a lock request comes in and when it ends up getting closed and funded, we don't know what the market's going to do, right? But this hedge position provides us peace of mind because we know that the hedge position is going to move in the inverse with an inverse correlation to the loans that you're actually hedging. So at the end of the day, you're going to come out neutral. So any sort of losses in loan value or gains in loan value is going to be balanced by gains or losses in the hedge position. So that's what this graphic here is trying to describe. In the two different scenarios where if rates were to decrease, that means your loan value is going to increase. The loan value of your hedged loans are going to increase, while the value of your TBAs are going to decrease. Same with the opposite scenario. If rates were to increase, your loan value is going to decrease, but your TBA or your hedge position is going to increase. So at the end of the day, you're always coming out neutral. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the process of how hedging works in order to allow sellers to deliver and sell on a mandatory basis. So looking at this graphic here, left to right, I do want to start out by pointing or talking about one item that's very critical in the whole hedging and mandatory process, which is called pull through. It's pretty self-explanatory. Many of you guys probably already know what this means, but pull through is essentially the likelihood of your loans ending up being closed and funded. So, pull through is going to change throughout as the loans move through the loan process in the different statuses that it's in. So, at the very beginning of the loan process, when the lock request comes in, we might look back and determine that for one seller, for example, let's just use round numbers here for simplicity's sake. Let's say a lender has an 80% pull through at the point of lock, meaning there's an 80% chance that when lock requests get submitted, those loans are going to end up getting closed and funded. Now, as those loans move closer and closer to the point of funding and being closed, obviously pull through is going to increase all the way to 100% once it is closed and funded. So at that point, you are ready for what we call best execution, or just a mandatory loan sale here. So at this point, we're at this commit to investor stage, right? And what's nice about mandatory loan sales is that it opens you up to a variety or tons of opportunities to sell your loans in a variety of ways, as opposed to best efforts where it's a little more limited in binary, like I mentioned earlier. So we'll touch on some of these different delivery methods later on in the slide deck, but just know mandatory is going to allow you to bid your loans out to various types of execution outlets in order to come back with the highest price. So right, going back to one of the main benefits of hedging, which is profitability, getting bids back from a variety of different execution outlets is just going to increase your chances of truly maximizing your profitability on your loan sales, which is really what the focus is here. So moving on, let's talk about those benefits of hedging. I know I've already mentioned a few of these already, but let's kind of sum them up in a few different bullet points here. So going left to right here, let's start on the performance and profitability section right here. So again, there is quite a bit of a spread between mandatory and BE pricing. Again, that goes back to the investors knowing that they have this full 100% guarantee that they're going to end up with the loans at the end of the day. So they're willing to pay more for those mandatory loans. What's nice too is that it eliminates hedging and mandatory loan sales, eliminate the need for trying to time the market with locking and selling your loans. Usually what ends up happening is a lot of our clients will develop a rhythm and kind of a set predictable schedule on when they go to sell their loans. So for example, it really depends on how much volume people are selling on a weekly basis. But some clients will sell once a week on Tuesdays, for example, or maybe twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Either way, it's very predictable, where you don't need to worry about what the market is doing, because that's why we have the hedging positions on, or the hedge positions on, to protect from those changes in the market. And so, there is some kind of tied to the ability to eliminate market timing, is the uh, control and flexibility aspect of this all too. So, for example, say there's a major news event that drops on the day that you normally would sell your loans, and the market ends up tanking. There is no obligation to sell or commit your loans on those days, right? It's totally up to you. So if you did want to hold on your loans for an extra day to hopefully see a rebound in the market, that is a strategy you could take. It's not necessarily the best strategy, but there is some increased flexibility there as well. In terms of operational efficiency, I'll touch on some of this more when we go and discuss the operational changes with mandatory loan sales. But a few of the things like underwriting, the lock process, even the shipping is going to be streamlined, because again, you're managing everything in aggregate instead of on a loan by loan basis. And then especially with underwriting too, uh, rather than underwriting to a single investor, you're underwriting to a set of global guidelines, right? So there are some ways to improve your operations from mandatory in hedging altogether. And then finishing up on the control and flexibility section here, the last thing I just want to mention is that as it relates to flexibility. If you needed to extend your loans by a few days, what's nice as opposed to best efforts is, rather than taking out an extension with the investor because you need an extra day or two to close that loan, you don't have to take out an extension with the investor because you haven't made the commitment to the investor yet. And so, there is a slight hedge cost at the end of the day, but if you needed an extra day or two, it's usually no big deal to hold those loans for an extra day, and then sell them next time you have your loan sale. So there are some major benefits there. So moving on, let's quickly touch on the requirements needed to hedge. So again, these are all our recommendations, but the biggest thing here to focus on is really volume. So really, we have found that any lender that's doing 10 million or more in agency eligible volume, very standard vanilla products, uh, should be hedging, because then they can recoup the benefits of mandatory loan sales. So a couple things to note here. We would never push or try to encourage someone to hedge if they're doing less than 10 million a month consistently, right? The reason why that is just because hedging doesn't necessarily work as well with lower levels of volume, say $1 to $2 million of loans per month. But there are other ways to hedge, not just with TBAs, but with mandatory agency forwards, for example, that could be useful as well. But one thing I do want to mention is that when it comes to products, though, we don't want to hedge any sort of non-agency types of loans, any sort of jumbos, non-QM hedging. That's a conversation for another day. But really, we just want the vanilla standard products, and that's because the hedging instrument that we use, the TBA, is most closely correlated with these products. So that allows the hedge model to work effectively, and that's why we really only care about those standard agency eligible products. Uh, Moving on, though, as it relates to the centralized lock desk, this is a critical piece of hedging, because it allows for more control over and ensures that the right loans are getting hedged and the appropriate loans are still being committed on a best efforts basis. Um, there we have identified some cases where there are some profit leakage uh, that's occurring when say your LOs are the ones that are responsible for locking as well. So if you don't have a centralized lock desk or a lock desk in-house, analyst in-house, we would encourage you to either reach out to us if you are interested in outsourcing that function to us, or looking to hire in-house as well to not only take away the responsibility of your LOs locking their own loans, because that really at the end of the day that's not what they're there for, right? But it does provide extra control and stability in your process, having it centralized. Moving on, delegated underwriting is really critical, and this relates to pull through and the hedging model that we use. And the reason why delegated underwriting is critical with hedging is because we need to be able to track where in the loan process the loans that you're hedging currently are. So we need to know if it's in different statuses like docs out, underwriting approved, etc. And this helps us determine again how much of a hedge position we want to have on, what is the pull through of these loans, are any of these loans sitting in a certain status for too long, etc. So having delegated underwriting is certainly critical. Now, in terms of net worth requirement, this is obviously kind of a little more geared toward the IMBs out there. But what I will mention is it's somewhat tied to the bullet point underneath it, related to investors and broker dealer approvals. So the most common kind of aggregators out there, same with a lot of the common regional broker dealers, have a net worth requirement of 2.5 million. So that's why we encourage those lenders to be at that position before they start considering mandatory. And then policies and procedures. This is just for not only for auditing purposes but for your own operations as well. If mandatory and hedging is something that's brand new to you guys, feel free to lean on us for any sort of guidance there, because we can certainly help out with our experience in this space. So let's move on to the operational changes. When it relates to the lock desk and hedging in general, the lock process actually gets a lot easier. I actually got my start at MCT as a lock desk analyst, so I have firsthand experience in this space. It's much easier and quicker to lock your loans on a head when they're gonna eventually be hedged, as opposed to going to the investor website, committing with the investor, and all that. And if any sort of extensions are needed or changes occur to the loan or the lock, you don't have to go to the investor website and make all those changes as well. So there's some huge efficiencies on the lock desk side when it comes to hedging. And really, we just want to notate what the price you would have gotten had you sold your loans on a best efforts basis, because that allows us to benchmark your profitability gains through hedging as well. So underwriting, we kind of talked about this a little bit already. It's you're not underwriting to a single investor. You're identifying all the eligible investors. So underwriting guidelines are more on a global basis. And then as it relates to secondary professionals out there, you might be a little nervous about getting into mandatory and hedging without having the experience prior. Don't worry about that at all. A hedge provider like MCT is here to, kind of hold your hand through all of those processes and take care of all the hedging and loan sales for you. We can even train you up on how to do it on your own if you wanted to develop your skill set there. But there are some daily disciplines that we encourage our secondary clients to take advantage of, which are just monitoring reports in your pipeline on a daily basis to make sure any sort of data is held to the highest degree of integrity, And then, obviously you want to make sure that you're determining which loans are ready to be sold, and that when we do put them out for bid, that you can have final say on where they end up ultimately getting executed. Now, on the accounting side of things, I will say this is probably where the biggest change is felt when making the transition from best efforts to mandatory. Again, there are tons of folks out there in the industry that can help with, including MCT, that can help with, learning how these new cash flows work as it relates, because you got not only loan sales occurring at a different time in the lock process as opposed to best efforts, but now you're dealing with this hedge position that's going to create different cash flows that you might not be familiar with. But again, fear not. There's plenty of reporting and ways to pick this up pretty quickly. So I will say that is sort of the biggest change that is felt typically. So I got a few graphs here. Just I want to show you guys the pricing differences between best efforts pricing and mandatory pricing. So this specific report here is looking at those spreads just based off the different programs. So this data is coming directly from our lender analytics platform that we have, where it collects all the MCT client data anonymously. We have about 300 hedging clients in total, and we've kind of done the math, and it equates to about 1 in 4 mortgages originated in the U.S. So we feel that this data is fairly representative of the actual market. So a couple things to highlight here. Obviously, conventional 30 products are probably going to be the most common products that we see delivered on sold on a mandatory basis. And then FHA2, both those spreads are right around the 40 basis point mark over best efforts pricing. Conventional 15 and VA 30-year products are a little bit lower. But you can see there are different swings in the market, right, where investors might be compressing or tightening their pricing a little bit. But still, the lesson to be learned here is that there is significant pickup opportunities for those hedgeable products. Moving on, we'll quickly touch on this similar graph. We're still looking at B to mandatory spreads. And this one is specifically looking at conventional 30 products and investors that are buying those products. So I hit all the investors here that are being highlighted, but you'll see that certain investors, depending on the day, right, this is looking back at all the way from the beginning of this year, investor appetites change. So having a robust set of investor approvals is only going to help maximize your execution at the end of the day, because you'll see some investors like this one in red, they'll peak up on certain days or certain weeks, and when they want to be a little more aggressive and buy more of the market. Same with the conventional, or I'm sorry, the government side of things. Appetites change. You want to make sure that you have all the right investors in place to take advantage of those pickups. So real quick before we wrap up, I do want to touch on the different types of execution opportunities that people will have or sellers have via mandatory delivery. So as opposed to best efforts, that's a little more black and white. Mandatory allows you to sell your loans in a variety of ways, especially if you have approvals with the agencies, either of them or both. It's going to open up new ways of selling your loans. So this is a little cheat sheet if you wanted to kind of learn more about the different opportunities here. But I just want to highlight that there are, whether it's through the agency cash window or through AOTs or agency forwards or co-issue, retaining the loan, there are so many ways that you can sell your loan on a mandatory basis. And this graph here is showing you the difference in pricing that for the different Fannie execution outlets as opposed to just a standard average aggregator execution. So as you can see, co-issue is something that wasn't on the last graph, but co-issue is a big part of the execution or secondary market. It's really what co-issue is you're bidding you're selling the underlying asset of the loan to the agencies, but you're bidding out the servicing portion of the loan to a third party. And so the pickups there are definitely significant. So it's important if you have the bandwidth to position yourself to take advantage of these different types of execution outlets. We would highly encourage you to do so. Real quick, these are some AOT savings data that we have. Again, AOTs in general might be more reserved for a mandatory or hedging 201 type of presentation. But without getting too into the weeds, AOTs really just mean where if you have a hedge position on that you need to remove because you're ready to sell loans, you can assign that trade that you're ready to pair out of and assign it directly to the investor that you're selling your loans to so that you don't have to pay the transaction costs of pairing out of that hedge position. So this graph is showing you the savings that occur from those transactions alone. And obviously, I think this presentation is a little more geared towards the folks with lower levels of volume that are thinking about making the move to mandatory. And so the savings there is fairly significant. But I do want to highlight that the percentage of the loans that are hedged that end up getting AOT is quite significant amongst our clients. So nothing to overlook. And obviously with more volume, with more volume, this peer group down here is the 25 to 50 million client peer group that we have. The savings just multiply. So it's certainly a big portion of what we look at when we go to execute your loans. So this kind of my one of the last slides I have. I'll maybe save this for you guys to refer to later if you want to take a closer look at how the process of hedging and mandatory loan sales works. But what I really want to summarize here on this last slide are the benefits of mandatory loan sales and hedging altogether. Again, it goes back to the requirements. If you do have that volume threshold of over 10 million per month in agency standard vanilla products that you're selling on a monthly basis, we would highly encourage you to take advantage of the mandatory pricing that all your investors are currently offering today. All it takes is a few changes in your operations in order to position yourself to take advantage of it. But it's money that's being left on the table if you are in a position from volume perspective to get into mandatory loan sales. So again, if it's something you're looking into, feel free to reach out to us if you do have any questions about it, because we'd be happy to guide you through the process and kind of hold your hand through it all. So that's really all I have for you guys today. We'll make sure to share this slide deck for you guys. And so you can always reference it later in the future if you'd like to. But please, feel free to reach out to me or anyone on the MCT or TNC team if you do have any further questions. But I'll wrap it up there, Mimi.
Thank you, Chad. That was very informative. We appreciate that. And I can imagine going from best effort to mandatory. It's a scary thing for people who don't understand, have never done it before. So I can tell you MCT is huge on education and they are great with customer service. So they will never let you do it alone. If you guys are interested, have questions, please reach out. We're happy to connect you with our partners here at MCT. I think you would be very excited to be working with them. I don't see any questions in here, Chad, so you must have done a really great job explaining everything. We will be sharing the recording and the presentation with everyone afterwards. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you guys again very soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone.